we will go a little beyond from yesterday's discussion. So in today's class, okay, so there are 12 participants, and when I finished my yesterday's class, there were about 5 or 6 members only. So I need to tell some of the things from the yesterday's class so that I can communicate properly. I can connect. I will try to connect this class with the yesterday's class so that you will not face any problems for those participants who have left actually. Okay. So this is our Cooper, a book of cell biology, a very simple and journalized book actually. This is having very easy language, and the description, the diagrams, everything is amazing in this particular book. So you can refer this particular book for cell biology, and at least you need to study this if you want to read the cell biology in detail. I also have one more book, Alberts, but I will not suggest because that is too complex, and I will try to simplify that particular section, means this particular section from that book. But at least you need to read this particular book. So yesterday we have discussed uh, nuclear receptor superfamily, and I also have shown you one of the diagrams in which I told you about the basic conformation of a nuclear receptor. So nuclear receptors are proteins. So these proteins, they are known as nuclear receptors, though they can be found in the cytosol or in the nucleus. So it is having an N terminus and C terminus. This protein can be divided into these domains. So first domain is A/B, C domain, D, E, and F domain. The function are written here. Okay, so it is having two activation function domains. So this AF4 activation function 1. This is AF1, and it is also having one AF2, which is on the C terminus of this particular protein. This is having a DNA binding domain with the help of which this particular nuclear receptor protein is able to bind to its target DNA sequence. We have discussed this target DNA sequence is known as HRE, or hormone response element, or in the simple words, it is called response element. So the response element is the part of DNA where this particular DNA binding domain of this particular nuclear receptor protein will bind. It is having a hinge region and another domain which will bind to the ligand and will also help in the dimerization of this nuclear receptor. Okay. And this particular domain, F domain, we do not know the function about this particular domain, but yes, this is also forming some domain-like structure. Okay, so some of you may also not familiar with the domain. Okay, so domain is that part of protein which is able to fold in 3 dimensions automatically. Means the nucleic and the amino acid sequence will decide what is the final conformation of that particular protein, and the protein is made up of some basic units which are known as domains, okay, which is having some function. So this nuclear receptor protein will enter into the nucleus, and with the help of your ligand binding domain, it will form a dimer and will bind a sequence of DNA called as hormone response element, or simply response element. This response element is also having some specific conformation. It will have two hexameric inverted repeats with the help of which the two receptors or nuclear receptors will interact. And these small dots over these receptors is known as your ligands or signal molecules, which are generally the steroid hormones. We will discuss one, for example, estrogen in today's class. Okay, so okay. Beside estrogen, there are certain other steroid hormones. We know some of the sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone. We also know some of the glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids created from the kidney, and thyroid hormone from the thyroid gland, vitamin D3, and retinoic acid from the vitamin A. So all these can be put into the single class because they all bind to the nuclear receptor superfamily. So these are signal molecules, these are primary messengers, these are ligands, but they will bind to the same nuclear receptors in a similar fashion. Means something, the mechanism is same at least. So we will discuss estrogen. Okay, so estrogen is a female sex hormone. So this particular hormone, how the mechanism of action, how this particular hormone works. So it will cross the plasma membrane of the cell, go inside cell, because this is a steroid hormone. So it can easily pass through the plasma membrane. After crossing the plasma membrane, it will reach into the cytosol, and after crossing your nuclear membrane, it can finally reach into the nucleus. Now, in the nucleus, the receptor for this particular estrogen or this particular steroid hormone is already bound with some chaperone, or this is called heat shock protein 90, HSP90. This heat shock protein is already bound to the inactive estrogen receptor, but it will remain bound until and unless the estrogen will reach. Once estrogen will reach into the nucleus or in the cytosol, it will lead to the conformational change of this particular receptor, so that the affinity of HSP90 will decrease for the receptor, and the receptor ligand complex will be formed. And not only this, this particular receptor dimer complex will form a dimer with the same another receptor which is also present somewhere. Okay, so because they are present in multiple numbers, so they can easily form the dimers. Once dimer is formed, this particular so this is nuclear receptors, so they will have two domains at least. One is ligand binding domain or the dimerization domain, and another domain that is different color you can see here for binding with the DNA. So these are called DNA binding domains or the C domains. Okay, so this particular domain will interact with your DNA, and the DNA is present in the form of chromatin. You can see the histone proteins here. So these histone proteins and this white thread wrapped over these histones is known as DNA. So the sequence of DNA which is recognized here, this particular DNA sequence is known as response element. So our hormone estrogen, whether it's receptor and these complexes in the dimer form, will able to bind to the specific response element of the DNA. Once they are bound, and another protein, or that is called as coactivator, will come and bind over this particular dimerized complex. So this HAT is a histone acetyl transferase enzyme. Histone acetyl transferase will do some kind of modifications over histones. It will add some acetyl groups or lead to the transfer of some of the acetyl groups, so that it will help in the transcription to happen, so that the in such a way it will transfer the acetyl groups, so that the chromatin will open, the DNA structure will open, and the responsive genes or the target gene transcription can be initiated. So some of the genes will form the mRNA, and then the protein will be synthesized out of those particular mRNA. Now, many times this particular question has been asked. Okay, so that is not a part or section here to discuss actually, but actually because we are discussing estrogen, so estrogen is also involved in the, okay, we have a diagram here. All this we have discussed yesterday, prostaglandins, due to which we are able to feel the pain and inflammation. So the functions are given in your Pathfinder first chapter. So the prostaglandins are having these functions, thromboxanes, they are also having some platelet aggregation and all these things. Okay, so you need to. Now, estrogen we are discussing. So we reach to the estrogen. Okay, this particular diagram I have discussed with you. So now this menstrual cycle. Okay, so this particular cycle is also involving this particular hormone, and the direct question has been asked several times actually. So you need to remember this estrogen is having peak before the luteinizing hormone or LH hormone. So FSH is followed by estrogen and then LH hormone. Both estrogen and LH is responsible for this ovulation. And then finally, if the fertilization will not happen, then progesterone hormone will increase, and then the cycle will end and leads to another cycle. So, okay, so hope you are able to understand the estrogen. Then we will move to another section. Today's discussion. Okay, so beside these particular steroid hormones, these are also including ecdysone, which is an insect hormone I told you yesterday, which is responsible for metamorphosis and when the larvae are developing into adults. Okay, so they are also having same mechanism of action. Then there is thyroid hormone, vitamin D3, retinoic acid. They are structurally and functionally distinct from the steroids, but they will share a common mechanism of action in their target cells. First, we will discuss thyroid hormones, and we will also discuss this vitamin D3, which is responsible for regulation of calcium metabolism and bone growth in our body. And the retinoic acid, okay, this will also we will discuss. This is a portion of GBCR actually, but we will discuss how vitamin A is responsible for retinoic acid synthesis, and the vitamin A is also having role in our vision. Means we are able to see in the dim light with the help of rod cells in our eyes, retina. So we'll discuss one by one. Okay, now we'll move to this particular section. So first, vitamin D. We know the vitamin D we obtain from the sunlight. So this. Okay, so when we are in sunlight, our bodies are able to synthesize vitamin D. Then this vitamin D, which we have in the presence of some ultraviolet rays which are coming from the sunlight, which we are getting from the sunlight, are able to degrade. Now, understand this particular mechanism because this is very important, and this vitamin D is having some role in calcium metabolism. So, actually, some of the students face problem how this vitamin D is able to regulate our bone density, or how the calcium metabolism happens within our bodies. So you need to focus here. So in our body, because these all hormones which we are discussing, sorry, I forgot to tell you one thing actually. Wait a minute. So actually all these hormones which we have seen here, okay, testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, cortisol, aldosterone, thyroid hormone, vitamin D3, actually we are going to discuss this particular section, and retinoic acid. So actually we are leaving this particular retinoic acid because it is having something different structure. But you can see multiple rings, multiple uh, nucleus structure, steroid nucleus structure in almost all of these cases. So actually, these all signal molecules, or we can say some of the signal molecules are hormones actually. So these hormones are biosynthesized within our body from cholesterol. So it is very clearly written here that the steroid hormones, including the testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, corticosteroids, and these ecdysone, all are synthesized from the cholesterol. So the main parent molecule from where these are synthesized is cholesterol. So now some of you may have questions in your mind that cholesterol, generally we heard that cholesterol is harmful, means it should not be in diet. Okay, but remember, everything in excess is harmful. But at least we need some basic amount, basic requirement should be fulfilled so that this cholesterol can lead to the biosynthesis of these different hormones. Okay, now Shreya is asking something. So please repeat this chart of estrogen, progesterone. Which chart you are asking, Shreya? That particular diagram or the cycle? Shreya, are you able to hear me? Uh, okay. So, okay. So this chart actually you have studied many times, but actually this is not part of discussion in this particular signaling class. I will elaborate this particular chart in more detail when we come to these animal physiology section. Okay, so we will discuss again. For now, actually, I want to connect this particular thing with the with one question which may be asked. But for now, only you need to understand the peaks actually, so that you should remember these peaks. Okay, so sometimes ABCD is written on these peaks, and someone can ask direct question what they are representing actually. So if you understand the first peak is uh, this Abu peak is belong to FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, which is responsible for which stimulates the follicle, an ovarian follicle to mature. Okay, so this estrogen and luteinizing hormones are then responsible for the ovulation actually, in the a process in which an egg is released from the ovary. Okay, so this actually happens about 14, about mid of the cycle actually. So 14th, 15th day, then the progesterone will release and the cycle will end. Now, okay, so we were actually on this particular section, and I told you that this vitamin D and other related steroid hormones are biosynthesized from cholesterol. So the cholesterol is a parent molecule. So at least we need some amount in our diet so that we can synthesize so many hormones. Okay, so you know these all are very important. So, and the parent molecule is cholesterol only. So we need cholesterol in our diet. It should be there. There are some queries I am not getting. Rishla. Steroid signal molecule synthesis occur by cholesterol. Yes. And produced from gonads glands. Okay. Yes. How does it happen? Can you please elaborate? Okay. So also, this is not a section here, but okay, I can tell you something. So the cells which are, so these are sex hormones. So these are biosynthesized by gonads, either testes or ovaries. Whereas the cortisol, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids, they are synthesized in kidney cells. Okay. Thyroid hormone we will discuss. It is biosynthesized from tyrosine and in the thyroid gland actually. So thyroid also I have covered in this particular lecture. I will tell you how this thyroid is synthesized actually. Okay, so here. So this is your tyrosine. You know, you all know amino acid tyrosine. So from the tyrosine, actually, your thyroid hormone can actually the more active form is T3. It is also there. T4 is also there. So it is only 10%. T3 is more, means about 90% is this particular active form. So they are synthesized, means the thyroid is in the thyroxine T3 and T4. The thyroid hormones are synthesized from the tyrosine amino acid. Similarly, the other hormones are also synthesized with the help of some means cholesterol and other things. Okay, then they are having certain different metabolic functions. For example, the T3 and T4, they are responsible for metabolism. And metabolism include both catabolism and anabolism. So let me move step by step. Otherwise, everything will be khichdi ban jayegi nahi to. Okay, so first of all, we are discussing vitamin D. So this vitamin D is synthesized in the presence of sunlight, UV rays, actually UVB, ultraviolet B. So we have 7-dehydrocholesterol in our body, and in the presence of UV light, this 7-dehydrocholesterol will be converted into vitamin D3. Similarly, we also get some of the vitamin D from the dietary sources, but very few actually, or some supplementations are in USA. So, so these all are converted into vitamin D2 or ergo called calciferol actually. Now this D2 and D3 need to convert it into this active form. This is called calcidiol. But this is not the active form actually. This is further converted into calcitriol. So one more hydroxy group is added to this particular position, first position. So sometimes a direct question may be asked, which is the active form of vitamin D. So you need to remember this calcitriol, which is having 125, it is having one OH on first position and two OH on 25th position. So this calcitriol is the active form of vitamin D, and the function we will discuss because it is related to bone physiology. Okay, so the calcium absorption and distribution actually. So now this cholecalciferol or vitamin D3 or this vitamin D2, both are inactive forms of this vitamin D. These need to be converted with the help of some enzyme which is released by your liver. Okay, so it is called 25 hydroxylase, vitamin D 25 hydroxylase, which will hydroxylate means add a OH group over 25th position in cholesterol or in this particular structures. So little formation of calcidiol, then in your serum, the phosphate level will go down, which will stimulate or act as a stimulatory role, or with the help of some hormone called parathyroid hormone, it will directly stimulate the vitamin D1 alpha hydroxylase production, and the kidney is producing this particular hormone. So now you need to remember, first thing is happening in your skin. Actually, this particular this is called the means this particular component or this particular molecule is present in your skin, which is getting converted into this particular thing. Then with the help of your liver, actually, it is converted into this form, calcidiol form. Then this calcidiol, with the help of some enzyme from the kidney, is converted into the active form, calcitriol. So the three organs of your body, skin, liver, and kidney, are responsible for final conversion of this 7-dehydrocholesterol into active vitamin D or calcitriol. Now, what is the function of this calcitriol is, this is stimulating intestinal calcium and phosphorus absorption, means from your intestine when you are taking a dietary calcium or phosphorus. So it help, vitamin D help in the absorption with the help of some vitamin D receptors. Okay, by increasing the renal absorption of calcium. Also, when your kidney filter your blood, so from there, the renal absorption, reabsorption happens in the tubules. So actually in the distal tubule. So from where the calcium will come into the blood circulation again. These functions on bone and possibly the kidney, but not intestine. Actually, the renal absorption of kidney, actually this vitamin D is having, means having direct role in bone and in kidneys, but actually not in intestine. Okay, with the help of some parathyroid hormone. So parathyroid hormone is required for bone and kidneys, but it is not present in intestine, so it is not having some role there. If you are not able to understand this, you can go there. So in kidneys, actually, you are seeing this parathyroid hormone is stimulating the production of this particular enzyme. So it is required in bone and kidneys, but in the intestine, actually, there is no requirement of parathyroid hormone. Okay. Now, okay, so I first tell you something. So, this vitamin D3 regulates the calcium metabolism and bone growth in your body. Now we are going to discuss this thyroid hormone, which is synthesized from tyrosine in the thyroid gland. You need to underline this tyrosine amino acid because this tyrosine is responsible for the production of thyroid hormones in thyroid gland. which plays important role in development and regulation of metabolism. So your metabolism is under the control of the two hormones, two thyroid hormones. One is called T3, one is called T4. Okay, so what is the role in kidney? Parathyroid hormone, I told you, na? I'm telling again. So, Tushla, this parathyroid hormone is enhancing the production of this particular enzyme, which is responsible for conversion of this inactive form into the calcidiol into the calcitriol. So it will means hydroxyl group, adding, it will add a hydroxyl group, OH group, over the first position in the calcidiol. So it will convert it into the active form. Now, this tyrosine is responsible for the production of two hormones, two thyroid hormone. One is called T3 and T4, and also this particular reverse T3, that is an inactive form of the T3. So if you do not require the T3, because this T3 is very, very active form of thyroid hormone, okay, and it is present in high amount. If you do not require T3 anymore, so your body will convert it into the reverse T3 form. So it will add, okay, so the structure will be reversed. This particular tyrosine, so this particular ring, which is having two iodines, will come down and this will go up, and this will be inactivated. Now what is the physiology and what is the mechanism of action of the production of these thyroid hormones? So again, so first of all, you are having some pituitary gland in your hypothalamus. Okay, if you are not getting it from this particular diagram, I also have one more. Okay, so this is your hypothalamus, and you are having some minute gland below this hypothalamus. This is called anterior pituitary gland, and this pituitary gland is responsible for the production of many hormones. So this pituitary gland is under the control of the two type of mechanism. One is positive feedback, one is called negative feedback. So the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, or actually this is responsible for the production of thyroid, means this TSH will go to the thyroid gland, which is produced from the pituitary gland, and will tell the thyroid gland to synthesize these two hormones, T3 and T4. Also, when these two hormones are present in excess, they will send some negative feedback signals to the hypothalamus, to either hypothalamus or your pituitary gland, to stop the synthesis of either thyrotropin releasing hormone or the thyroid stimulating hormone. So the negative feedback mechanism can inhibit either hypothalamus. So it will produce one hormone called thyrotropin releasing hormone. This will not be produced. So if it is not be produced, so your pituitary will not synthesize the thyroid stimulating hormone, or directly the thyroid, this pituitary gland can be contacted. Now, once your thyroid gland get the signal for production of the T3 and T4, the two hormones will be produced, and then they will send to the different parts of your body, so that your metabolism can be increased, your growth and development can happen properly, and your catecholamine effect. This is quite different thing. I will tell you what is this. Now we will move to the first diagram. So actually three things will be produced from your thyroid gland beside this T3 and T4. This is also responsible for the production of calcitonin hormone. So this is your hypothalamus, this is your pituitary gland, anterior pituitary. Some hormone is produced by hypothalamus. This is called thyrotropin releasing hormone, which stimulate your pituitary gland. It will release some TSH hormone, which will tell your thyroid gland to produce these three hormones. Now, what is important to remember here is, okay, in humans, the ratio of these two hormones, one is called T4 one is called T4 and one is called T3. Sorry, I thought I told earlier this opposite. Actually, this T3 is more active, so it is present in less amount generally. And T4 is in more amount, but it is less metabolically active. This is the correctly can be depicted from the diagram. Okay. So in humans, this ratio of T4 and T3 released into the blood is approximately 14:1. So T4 is always high, T3 is always less. But remember, which is less will be more metabolically active. And finally, your T4 is also converted into T3 with the help of some enzyme. It's called deiodinase enzyme in peripheral tissues. And this deiodinase enzyme is using some selenium in its active site. So this enzyme, if you were asked some selenium dependent enzyme, so deiodinase is the best example. So with the help of selenium, it will convert this T4 into the T3, and this will be the more active form of the thyroid hormone. Second thing is, if the iodine, because the iodine is required for the proper production of these two hormones, if you are taking less iodine in your diet, then the production of T3 and T4 will be less, and there is a pressure over the thyroid gland to produce more hormone. So therefore, with the time, your thyroid gland will enlarge. So this butterfly-like structure over your throat, you can feel it. It can enlarge, and this enlarged condition of is the thyroid is known as goiter. So okay, so this is the disease related to this particular condition. This I already have told you that this T3 and T4, this T3 mainly is regulating your calcium metabolism and bone growth in the body. We have discussed this. We have discussed this now. So, okay, retinoic acid also we will discuss, but after okay, so I'm coming to retinoic acid, but actually I need to tell you something important. Okay, so in the previous diagram, in this particular estrogen diagram, or this particular mechanism of action of estrogen or the other steroid hormones, we have seen that the estrogen is a signal molecule, a primary messenger, which will able to bind to the nuclear receptors. These nuclear receptors, in the absence of estrogen hormone, are bound to some chaperone protein, HSP19, histamine protein 90. And when estrogen come, they will form a dimer. Dimer will bind to the response element over the DNA, and then another coactivator molecule will come and bind to this particular complex, and it will responsible for the transfer of acetyl groups over this histone protein, so that your transcription of some genes, targeted genes, can be achieved. Now, the second class, because yesterday we have discussed that this particular class, these are pure steroid hormones because they are synthesized from cholesterol. This thyroid hormone, it is synthesized from tyrosine. Okay, and similarly, this retinoic acid is having something some related structure, but something different actually. So they will also have same mechanism of action. They will bind to the nuclear receptors, but a little difference. Now we will discuss what is the difference, how they will bind. For example, this thyroid hormone we have discussed. Okay, so this thyroid hormone receptor bind DNA in either in the presence or absence of the hormone. So in the previous diagram, we have seen that these receptors were not bound to the DNA. Only when the estrogen or other sex hormones come, then they are able to bind to this particular DNA or the response element. But the thyroid hormone is quite different. Okay, so in the nucleus, it is either bound to the response element or may not be bound. So in this particular diagram, it is shown that it is bound already. Okay, so but because it is bound with this particular DNA sequence or the response element, but it is inactivated by some co-repressor molecule, which in the first diagram we have seen the receptor were bound with some chaperone protein, for example, HSP protein 90 in case of estrogen. But here, in case of thyroid, the co-repressor protein is called HDAC, histone deacetyl transferase complex. Okay, so this histone deacetylase will remove all those acetyl groups, particular histone acetyl transferase head. So now see, ओके, जब तक हार्मोन नहीं था तब तक वो इनएक्टिव फॉर्म में था. वंस द हार्मोन और द थायराइड हार्मोन or the T3 will come, the hormone will bind to its specific receptor sites. These green color T3 molecule will bind here, and it will lead to the conformation change of this particular receptor for this particular co-repressor, so that the co-repressor will be removed. It will go on. It will go away. And once it is go away, and when it is forming a ligand receptor complex and dimer is already formed, so this co-activator will come, and co-activator histone acetyl transferase will transfer some of the acetyl groups over these histone proteins, so that the transcription can be activated in response. Okay. Hope you are able to understand these two basic things. Both diagrams are quite similar, but few things are different. For example, these may already bound to the DNA molecule, or they are bound to some co-repressor protein, whereas in case of estrogen, they were bound with some heat shock proteins. Everything else is same. So if you are not able to understand, everything is written in text. If you are having Cooper, you can read it anytime. Okay. So now we will move to another class of signal molecules. Okay, so but before that, so I should tell retinoic acid first, and then we will move to another class of signal molecules. Actually, we need to move to GPCRs also, but we will go step by step. Okay, so here it is NO, and then we have, okay. So actually, this is your vitamin D or retinol. With the help of some this dehydrogenase or reductase enzyme, it can be converted into aldehyde form. So this OH will be removed, and this alcohol to aldehyde form conversion. So this dehydrogenase or reductase enzyme will convert into this retinol form. Now with the help of some another enzyme, it will be converted into 11 cis or into all trans. Sorry, this is 9 cis. 9 cis or all trans form. So actually, this, when the light come, will be converted into all trans form. So you can see it here also. So vitamin A role in eye. So the beta carotenoid or vitamin A in small intestine will be converted into retinol, and this retinol will be esterified and stored in the liver. So when required, this retinol will bound to some of the proteins, will enter into your retina. Okay, so the target cell in the red, and this retinol in the rods will be oxidized with the help of some dehydrogenase enzymes into retinal form. Now this retinal form will complex with a protein called opsin protein, which is a G protein actually, and rhodopsin is a GPCR. This opsin G protein will bound to GPCR, which we will discuss in today's class only. We are going to move to GPCR only. So this is GPCR. This is G protein. This GPCR are G protein coupled receptors. So because they are G protein coupled receptors, so they are interacting with some of the G proteins. So this opsin is an example of G protein only. So this GPCR is interacting with the opsin. Once the photopigment of vision will come, when the light will reach to your retina, so it will help this rhodopsin or the GPCR will undergo some kind of signal transduction and will allow you uh, to visualize the things in dim light. And actually, this rhodopsin pigment is present in your rod cells. So we are having two type of cell in our retina. One is rod cells, one is cone cells. Rod cells are responsible for black and white vision, means dim light vision, and the cones are responsible for colored vision. So whenever you need to look the colors, you need to look from a cone or angle. Okay. So for example here, So when light come, so this is a GPCR. We know G protein coupled receptors, for example, rhodopsin, is a serpentine molecule. I will show you the detailed structure of this particular molecule also. So for now, suppose this is a serpentine molecule, means 7 times it will move across the plasma membrane, and it will have it will have a domain outside the cell. This is extracellular surface, and it will have a domain in the intracellular side or cytoplasmic side, where this particular G protein that is called as opsin protein. So this rhodopsin will interact with this particular protein. So rhodopsin is acting with opsin and will allow the dim light vision. So now see. So once the photon or the light will come, and it will activate this retinal component in your GPCR. So this GPCR, this retinal or this retinoic acid, okay. So the related compounds are called retinoids, okay. For example, retinal. So this retinal is forming a complex with your GPCR protein. So this GPCR protein is having a role. When light come, it will convert this 9-cis into all transform retinal. And when the all transform will be formed, it will lead to some conformational change in the rhodopsin. This conformational change will activate this particular G protein, transducin protein or opsin protein, which is the active component of this particular transducin protein. So it will lead to the hydrolysis of these two subunit. One is called alpha subunit, one is called beta gamma subunit. So beta gamma subunit will interact with this particular receptor or GPCR, and alpha subunit is having bound GDP. Once it is activated, the GDP will be removed and the GTP will replace the GDP. So GTP will come, it will replace the GDP, and it will activate the alpha subunit of this particular transducin protein. And once the alpha protein is activated, okay, so you can see this yellow color means it is activated. It will go and, okay, this GTP will be converted into cyclic GMP. And also this will go and interact, and it will activate this phosphodiesterase enzyme. So phosphodiesterase enzyme will degrade all the cyclic GMP which is present in your cell cytosol, and cyclic GMP will be converted into GMP form, means which is not cyclic in nature. This is simple monophosphate form. Okay, so like this signal transduction will happen, and you will able to. Now what will happen is the cyclic GMP concentration will be decreased within your cell cytosol. It will inhibit some of the channels. I think you will not able to get this without this particular diagram. Okay, so here in your Pathfinder it is elaborated further. So cyclic GMP phosphodiesterase will convert the cyclic GMP into GMP form. So this GMP is required for the activation of these sodium channels. Okay, you know, when nerve conduction is happening from your eye to brain, the images are transferred. Okay, so we know when light come, there is an inverted and small image will be formed at the back of our retina. Okay, so then these signals will be converted into electrochemical signals, and those were sent to the brain for further processing. So actually, the signal go with the help of these depolarization, polarization events. So these channels means which are required for the sodium ions. So you can read it here. Once this, because this cyclic GMP is required for the sodium channels to open. Once the cyclic GMP, because these are cyclic GMP gated ion channels, sodium channels. Once cyclic GMP will be degraded, the channels will be closed, means they will not able to open. Okay, so this drop in the cyclic GMP concentration lead to the decrease in amount of cyclic GMP bound to the plasma membrane sodium ion channels. allowing more of these highly cyclic GMP sensitive channels to close, जिससे कि क्या होगा, तुम्हारे जो आपके sodium ion channels हैं close हो जाएंगे. Closure of these channels inhibit the influx of sodium ions, so that these are rod cells. So in rod cells, the sodium ions will not able to influx, cannot come in. So these channels are kept open in the dark by the cyclic GMP. Actually, जब तक light struck, means when there is no light in the dark, these ion channels are open with the help of the cyclic GMP. Once light come, the cyclic GMP will be degraded and these ion channels will be closed, so that there is no influx of sodium ions. Okay, so in this way, the light causes a hyperpolarization. Okay, so the question may be directly asked, what is the role of cyclic GMP or this particular light? So this light is responsible for hyperpolarization. It will not allow the sodium ions to come in. So the hyperpolarization, so the activation of the rhodopsin molecule by the light will result in hyperpolarization. Okay, this is not the depolarization event. This is hyperpolarization. Now, okay, so now we will move to another. We have discussed this thing. Now we are moving to another signal molecule. Yesterday I told you. Okay, so before moving into the new section, if you are having some queries, please ask here only. So I'm giving you 5 minutes break so that you can metabolize whatever we have read. Okay, then we will move to next section. Means these are quite different things, because these are gases, nitric oxides and carbon monoxides, which are required for signal transduction. Actually, these are also acting as primary messengers. So we will discuss this after listening to your queries. Okay, Ankita, hyperpolarization part you need to discuss. Okay. Anything else? Tell me what you need to, means what is your query? Hyperpolarization only. Okay. Okay, fine. So actually I need a diagram to elaborate this hyperpolarization. Okay, no worries. I will so are you able to see my Google Chrome page? Okay, so that is enough. So I will, okay, so the two things we will require. So first this. Oh, so you are not able to see my Google Chrome page. Sorry. Okay, so let me share first. Wait a minute. Okay, so I'm telling you something. How should I share this? Okay, so there is another screen. Okay, fine. Okay, I hope now it is visible. Okay. So see here, actually our null potentials are generally from -70 to +30. We have read this thing in our 12th class actually. Okay. So the actually three things will happen this time course actually when the null potential will change. One is called depolarization, one is called repolarization. So up to here when your nerve will achieve this particular potential of -70, so first thing is depolarization when a nerve impulse will be transmitted. Then when nerves restore its potential, this process is called up to here. This is repolarization. But what actually happens? More means more of the ions. For example, okay, I also need one more diagram actually. So here, so actually depolarization happen when your sodium ion channels will be opening. Okay, so the local potential will change and it will increase, mean towards the positive side, millivolts in positive side, mean up to 30 or 35. Then repolarization will happen, means your sodium ion channels will be closed and the potassium ion channels will be open. Okay, then up to here, up to -70 or -90, that is fine. But actually, more of the sodium ion channels will be opened and they will remain open after the potential reaches to the resting level. And because they will left open, so the peak means this potential will further decrease up to -110 or 100 at least. So up to -110. So this peak, this part of this repolarization part or the restoration phase is called hyperpolarization, which is result from the voltage gated K positive channels because they will remain open and they will take time to close. Therefore, more of the sodium ions, more of the potassium ions will be exchanged. Therefore, the potential will go down. Okay. Are you able to understand this portion or I need to explain it again to you? Because it is important. Many times the direct questions are asked, for example, how this depolarization is, means which ions are responsible for depolarization, which ions are responsible for hyperpolarization, what is the potential when hyperpolarization is actually happening. So the potential during hyperpolarization is generally less than -70, okay, so or -90. So actually the potential is generally -100 or -110 or 110 in the hyperpolarization state. And actually this hyperpolarization is result from the K positive ion channels. And you know there are sodium potassium pump in our plasma membrane. So sodium potassium pump is responsible for the transport of these ions. So it will exchange. So here you can see clearly. So it will exchange 3 sodium ions in with the 2 potassium ions actually. So that the potential across the plasma membrane can be maintained. Okay. So the 3 sodium ions and 2 potassium ions will be exchanged. And if the potassium ions are moving, means the more potassium ions will move, so the more negative will happen because for each sodium ion there is less potassium ions. Sodium is having one positive charge, potassium is also having one positive charge. So suppose more sodium ions are moving out of the cell and less means these things are coming into the, so the membrane will be negatively charged. So suppose if they are moving for the more means frequently and more duration of time, the more negative will be the membrane will be, and this particular membrane which is having more negative charge is called hyperpolarized. Yes, this depolarization is happening everywhere. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So now we are moving to our Cooper. Okay. So now the next section which we need to discuss is nitric oxide and carbon monoxide gases, which are required or which are being used as signal molecules. So these simple gases, yesterday also I told you that the signal molecule can be anything which is having low molecular weight. So for example, these can be simple gases like nitric oxide, carbon monoxide. These can be amino acids or simple peptide hormones or some of the sex hormones, for example, steroid hormones and these things. So in case of gases, it is major paracrine signaling molecule. Need to underline this thing. You know, paracrine is something which is in nearby cells, means because this nitric oxide is having less lifespan, it will be degraded very frequently. So therefore, this kind of signaling, which is happening with the help of the, and you should aware of the paracrine signaling, because yesterday also we had discussed the four forms of signaling: paracrine, endocrine, autocrine, and juxtacrine. So actually, the nitric oxide signaling is part of paracrine signaling. So like steroid hormones, this particular gas is also able to diffuse directly across the plasma membrane to its target cells. Uh, but the mechanism is different, and we need to discuss the mechanism in this particular class, because that's why we are discussing this signal transduction actually. So nitric oxide is synthesized from an amino acid called arginine. Okay. In the previous section, I told you that this tyrosine is responsible for the thyroid hormones production, and tyrosine is represented by Y. Okay, single letter. And the arginine, which is responsible for nitric oxide synthesis, is represented by arginase is R. So, okay, so here. I hope there is nothing before this particular slide. Okay. So before telling you the mechanism of how this nitric oxide is able to inhibit or activate some of the enzymes, first discuss the synthesis of this particular nitric oxides. Okay, so nitric oxide is synthesized from amino acid arginine by an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase enzyme. There is two class of enzyme. One is called synthase and one is called synthetase. I hope you are able to understand the differences in the terms. Synthase is anything which is not using the ATP energy. Synthetase is an enzyme which require ATP energy. So once synthesized, this nitric oxide diffuses out of the cell, and from the cell A, then it will move from the secretory cell to some other cell or the nearby cells, because it is part of juxtacrine signaling, and it will show its effect in the nearby cells. Okay, now our diagram is given here where arginine. So this is the structure of your arginine amino acid, which is having this functional group. Can anyone in this particular class can tell me what is this molecule is called? Means this functional group. Ankita Jadhav, I'm asking something. Got it. Beta, I'm asking what is this this functional group is called. This is called guanidino group actually. Okay. And you should remember that arginine is the most basic amino acid basic in the sense it is most positively charged amino acid in the amino acids. Okay, so it is having guanidino group, which is having this NHC, NH double bond NH2 plus. So because this is having valency is short because it is bound with 2 hydrogen and 2 double bond is with the carbon. So therefore it is having a positive charge. And it is the most basic amino acid in our amino acids. With the help of some reducing power, for example, NADPH, it will be converted into citrulline. This thing you have also studied in urea cycle actually. Okay, so this arginine will be converted into citrulline with the help of an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase. This is not synthetase because we are not using ATP here. And also we require oxygen. Now you can see that the reducing power will be converted into NADP plus and this particular thing, arginine, will be converted into citrulline. And the molecule or the signal molecule is produced, which is called nitric oxide. You can see the nitrogen is coming from the arginine and oxygen is coming from the oxygen. So now the question which can be asked from this particular section, very important section to discuss actually. So the first question is, I told you, because it is a paracrine molecule, so it will only act on nearby cells. Okay. So from here, there are lots of questions which can be formulated from this particular section. So it is a major paracrine signaling molecule. The nitric oxide will be synthesized by one cell and it will act over nervous immunocirculatory systems. Okay, so the second question is, because the nitric oxide can also cross the plasma membrane, जैसे कि हमारे steroid hormone करते थे, but it is having some different mechanism. It will not bind to intracellular nuclear receptors, but it is distinct from the steroid action rather than binding to a receptor or nuclear receptor that regulate the transcription. Nitric oxide alter the activity of intracellular target enzymes. So you need to underline this, intracellular target enzymes. I will tell you what are the enzymes which are in direct control of this particular nitric oxide. So it is given here actually. So this guanyl cyclase is one of the enzymes, one of the target enzymes of this nitric oxide. Okay, so the guanyl cyclase actually. I'm coming to that particular section once I'm finishing this particular text from this particular book. Third question is how it is synthesized. So it is synthesized from arginine and oxygen actually with the help of an enzyme which is nitric oxide synthase enzyme, not synthetase. Next question is, okay, so I have told you that this major intracellular target enzyme is guanyl cyclase. So this can also be asked, what is the function of the guanyl cyclase enzyme? So the guanyl cyclase is responsible for converting the GTP into cyclic GMP. Because it is cyclase enzyme, so it will convert the GTP into cyclic GMP. Okay, so okay, the next question is, nitric oxide bind to a heme group. Okay, so you need to underline this thing also. I will tell you how it is able to hamper this heme group. So this heme group is also a component of hemoglobin, okay, and myoglobin. So this heme group at the active site of this particular enzyme, guanyl cyclase. So okay, so now you will look into this particular diagram. This is an enzyme called guanyl cyclase. It will have two domains. One is called amino terminal domain and one is called C-terminal domain. So this amino terminal domain is having some heme binding domain. So you can see this particular ring-like structure. This is heme. If you have seen the heme structure, then you are clear that this is heme. And heme is having some iron Fe2 positive, which is bound to this particular heme ring. Okay. And in the guanylyl cyclase, one specific amino acid, that is histidine at 105 position, is responsible for interaction with this particular heme ring. Okay. So, and there is a dimerization domain and there is a guanylyl cyclase domain. So with the help of this domain, this particular enzyme is converting this GTP into cyclic GMP. In this process, pyrophosphate will be formed. Okay, now I will tell you about the function. The cyclic GMP is required, or I can say in simple words, this nitric oxide is required as a secondary messenger. The cyclic GMP will act as a secondary messenger in the cell, which will enable the smooth muscle relaxation actually. Or with the help of these smooth muscle relaxations, it will dilate your blood vessels so that the more blood can flow to your heart or some other organ. Okay, so because it is dilating your blood vessels, so you can think of that in some of the heart diseases, for example during heart attack or myocardial infarction, MI. So nitric oxide, if can be given, so it will increase the blood supply to the heart and the patient can be saved. So from the medical point of view, this nitric oxide is very important. It can save some lives. Okay. So actually, doctors generally give nitroglycerin actually. Similarly, the nitric oxide is able to bind to this particular heme ring over histidine 105 position. Similarly, this carbon monoxide is also having the same mechanism of action. It will also bind to the same histidine 105 position and the heme ring in your guanylyl cyclase enzyme. So you can see here clearly this is a heme ring, this is CO, carbon monoxide or nitric oxide, and it will bind with this particular histidine 105 heme ring. Okay, so histidine 105 is also interacting with this particular heme ring, and then nitric oxide or carbon monoxide will come and bind to this particular heme. Okay, so this blood vessel dilation is required for actually so that the blood supply can to the heart can be increased, or is also responsible for erection and muscle relaxation. Carbon synthesis is so this carbon monoxide synthesis is happening in your brain cells, whereas nitric oxide synthesis is happening in most of the other cells also. So doctors generally give nitroglycerin, which will produce NO, nitric oxide, and this can be used to treat the heart diseases, and which will increase the blood flow to the heart, and some person with myocardial infarction or like this can be saved. Now, second mechanism of action is if you are able to understand how it is interacting with the heme group and able to either uh, activate that particular enzyme, it can also, beside heme, it can also directly bind with the cysteine residues in your proteins. For example, if you are having some protein, guanylyl cyclase, so it will, nitric oxide will bind to this particular thiol group over the cysteine residue in the protein. So this is cysteine, this is a protein, it is having an amino acid called cysteine, and this cysteine residue will be nitrosylated with the help of this nitric oxide. So this protein, this is cysteine group, and over this thiol group SH directly bound with this is N double bond O. So this S nitrosothiol complex will be formed, and thus it can hamper or activate some of the enzymes. Okay. So first we will finish this thing now. If you are having some query, because I have told you two things simultaneously. One is this nitric oxide is inhibiting or means is binding to the heme ring in your guanylyl cyclase enzyme. And the second thing is it will directly modify some of the target protein by nitrosylation the cysteine residues in your protein. So if you are not able to understand the two things, I will repeat again. Priyanshi, I'm not clear, beta. What you want to ask? Please elaborate your query. Okay, guanidinium. What? Can you please retype your query in little? elaborated version. Okay, so no, sir, I was asking. Okay. So, that I told you that nitric oxide bind to the heme group at the active site of the enzyme and stimulating, underline this, it will activate the synthesis of cyclic GMP. Once it will bound to the heme group, it will activate that particular enzyme. In addition, NO may directly modify some of the target proteins by nitrosylating the cysteine residues. As I showed you, a well-characterized example of NO action is signaling in dilation of blood vessels. The first step in this process is release of neurotransmitter, for example, acetylcholine, from the termini of the nerve cells in the blood vessel wall. So your blood vessel wall or endothelial cells or endothelial membrane is releasing some of the neurotransmitter, for example, ACH, acetylcholine. It is given here. There is a list of neurotransmitters. For example, acetylcholine, glycine is an amino acid and also acting as a glutamate is also an amino acid but acting as a neurotransmitter. Then dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, these are hormones, but these are also acting like signal molecules. Okay, and serotonin, also histamine, which is formed from histidine amino acid. Okay, so these are signal molecules or nerve factors responsible for signal transduction. So, okay, so in today's class also, we have not entered properly into the signal transduction, though I told you something related to GPCR. But in tomorrow's class, we will discuss GPCR and their mechanism of action in more detail, because at least we need to finish this signal molecules or the ligand molecule portion first. Then we will discuss the receptors, for example, GPCRs. Because I am telling GPCR only because GPCR are the largest class of receptors actually over the cell surfaces, which is responsible for the signal transduction. Okay, so our smell sensors, for example, so we are able to sense, means the lights receptors, smell receptors, all these are GPCR proteins actually. Okay, so these neurotransmitters act on the endothelial cells to stimulate the nitric oxide synthesis. So this NO synthesis is from the endothelial cells, which will come into the circulation then. NO then diffuses from the neighboring smooth muscle cells because it is a paracrine signaling. So it will diffuse because it is a gas. So it will diffuse to the neighboring cells and enhance the smooth muscle relaxation, not contraction, because nitric oxide is dilating. Okay, so it will relax a smooth muscle where it will activate the guanylyl cyclase, resulting in synthesis of cyclic GMP. Then the cyclic GMP induces muscle cell relaxation and blood vessel dilation. So I hope you are able to understand this particular mechanism, how this is happening, all this happening. For example, NO is responsible for signaling in dilation of blood vessels that lead to the penile erection actually. Okay, so one function of the nitric oxide. So some individuals with this disease called erectile dysfunction. Okay, so it can be treated with the help of some drugs available in the market. For example, some of them are Viagra, for example. So it will enhance this cyclic GMP production actually. So cyclic GMP production will occur and it will relax the muscles, blood vessels will be dilated, the flow to the organ will increase, and thus it will help those particular patients. Okay, then this also interesting to note that the medical use of nitroglycerin I have discussed with you guys. Nitroglycerin in the treatment of heart diseases is based on its conversion to nitric oxide, because this nitroglycerin can be converted into nitric oxide. The production of nitric oxide will happen, which will dilate the coronary blood vessels, and this increase the blood flow to the heart. Okay, so similarly, another simple gas is carbon monoxide, which is having the also function as a signal molecule, but in the nervous system only. Okay, so because it is produced in the brain cells, are closely related to nitric oxide in the mechanism of action and appear to act similarly as neurotransmitter and mediate the blood vessel dilation. Synthesis of this gas CO is actually happening in our brain cells like that of the nitric oxide. So this is not something surprising. The carbon monoxide is also produced by some of the brain cells, and it will act in your nervous system, so that the blood vessels in your nervous system can be dilated and the blood flow to the brain can increase. So like that, nitric oxide is stimulated by neurotransmitters. For example, acetylcholine. In addition, CO, or the carbon monoxide, can stimulate guanylyl cyclase in the same enzyme, which may also represent the major physiological target of the carbon monoxide signaling. So, okay, so the class strength is getting decreased. Only 8 participants are remaining in, because we are having last 10 minutes of our class at least. So we will discuss neurotransmitters, and all these are the structures of neurotransmitters here, which are the signaling molecules between the neurons or from neurons to other type of target cells, for example, muscles. You also know neuromuscular junctions. Okay. So now I'm skipping this particular section. There is nothing important. Okay, so we are coming to this particular section. So we have discussed steroid hormones. We have discussed some steroid-like hormones or some non-steroid hormones, for example, retinoic acid and this thyroid hormones and vitamin D3, of course. Then we have discussed some of the gases, for example, nitric oxide and carbon monoxide. Now, there are some peptide hormones or growth factors which are also act like signal molecules. Okay, so there is also a long list, and majority of them are actually the peptide hormones, because yesterday also I told you that majority of the cell surface receptors are extracellular. So where these signal molecules or hydrophilic molecule will able to bind. So widest variety of signaling molecules in the animals are peptides actually. Underline this, this is the widest class ranging from in size from few to more than 100 amino acid molecules. So this group of signaling molecule include peptide hormones, neuropeptides, and diverse array of polypeptide growth factors actually. For example, nerve growth factor, epidermal growth factor, we will discuss all these. Well-known examples are peptide hormone, including insulin, glucagon, and hormone produced by the pituitary gland. For example, growth hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. I also showed you in that particular cycle. Okay, prolactin hormone and others. Neuropeptides are secreted by some of the neurons and the small molecules discussed in previous section also. And the range of peptide hormones or some neuropeptides are given here. For example, these are peptide hormones: insulin, glucagon, growth factors, FSH, and prolactin. Neuropeptides and neurohormones are oxytocin, substance P, vasopressin, beta endomorphin, and this enkephalin, for example. And growth factors are various types: nerve growth factor, epidermal growth factor, pituitary growth factor, PDGF. Interleukin 2 I discussed yesterday. This is responsible for auto regulation of these cells, means T cells proliferation. So this is autocrine signaling molecule. Erythropoietin is also responsible for development of red blood cell or RBCs. So there is vast array of these signaling molecules. So you can read the text actually when these nerve factors and all these things are discovered. Okay, so who discovered them? Everything is discussed here, but actually this is not we supposed to discuss in the signaling class. Okay, so we are moving to another class that is called eicosanoids. Actually, I also told you yesterday also the eicosanoids. So these eicosanoids are including prostaglandin, prostacyclin, thromboxane, leukotrienes. Okay, so yesterday also I told you this section is very important, and actually any question can be asked directly. For example, aspirin based questions or some of the parent molecule based questions. For example, all the leukotrienes and these prostaglandins, what is the basic function? These are responsible for pain sensation in our body. So we are able to feel the pain, fever, inflammation with the help of these molecules only. So if these molecule can be inhibited, we are able to inhibit their synthesis with the help of some drug, for example, aspirin or ibuprofen. So this particular enzyme, cyclooxygenase, will be inhibited by these drugs, and therefore the production of these eicosanoids will be inhibited. The parent molecule, which is responsible for the production of these different classes of molecules, is called arachidonic acid, which is coming from phospholipids. With the help of some phospholipase A2 enzyme, these phospholipids, which are present in your plasma membrane, will be converted into arachidonic acid. This arachidonic acid will have 20 carbons. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4. If you count, these are 20 carbons up to this methyl group, and the methyl group is called omega carbon. So okay, so alpha, beta, gamma, and the last carbon is omega, and this 20 carbon. So the number of double bonds, because they are having more than one double bond, therefore they were called polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFA. Or they are also can be put in a class called essential fatty acid, means they cannot be synthesized within our body, because our body cannot create a double bond beside ninth position in this particular fatty acid chain. Therefore, we require them in our diet. We should have them in our diet. Okay, so this are coming under PUFA or essential fatty acids or polyunsaturated fatty acid class. So they are having double bond. For example, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 5. This is 8, this is 11, this is 14. So it is having 4 double bonds. This is polyunsaturated fatty acid. Now, these molecules are synthesized from it, and these all are acting as signaling molecules so that your pain or these things can be. Now, what you should remember from this particular section is there is two families of this cyclooxygenase. One is called cyclooxygenase 1 and second is called cyclooxygenase 2. Now the question is, actually one question has already been asked. This aspirin or ibuprofen, because we know it is able to inhibit this particular enzyme cyclooxygenase. So, and question is whether it is inhibiting one or two. So the answer is actually it is inhibiting inhibiting both cyclooxygenase 1 and 2 enzymes. However, selective COX-2 inhibitors may also be associated with serious side effects, and including the, okay, so it is telling that there is two enzymes. One is COX-1, which is generally present in high amounts, and COX-2 only required if there is an inflammation or disease, means COX-2 only work when there is a disease. So, or there is an inflammation. So some of the enzymes, some of the drugs which specifically only inhibit the COX-2 can also have some serious side effects, but this aspirin will inhibit both of the COX-1 and COX-2. Actually, if you want to ask me the drug which is able to inhibit specifically the COX-2, okay, so you can find on internet. I do not know. I generally know the two names. One is aspirin, second is ibuprofen, and the aspirin can inhibit both. You need to check whether ibuprofen is also able to inhibit the both enzymes, or it is inhibiting specifically some either one or two. So this is the homework for you. Then there is some plant hormones, because the signaling or cell signaling was also happening in plants also. So these plant hormones are also showing some type of signal transduction. There is 5 classes. One is called auxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, abscisic acid, and ethylene. Okay, so actually this diagram is showing that how auxin work. Now you need to look very carefully. There is a query. Okay. Ankita is not able to hear me. Are the other members are able to hear me, or you are also facing the same problem? Okay, Ankita, thank you. So one more important diagram I need to discuss in this particular class, so that after finishing this, tomorrow we can move to this particular section of G protein coupled receptor. So I will discuss first that this G protein coupled receptors are serpentine molecules. So they will having domains which will traverse your plasma membrane 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they are having N terminus outside the cell and C terminus towards the cytosolic side. So C for C. So C terminus towards the cytosolic side. and then they were interacting with some other proteins. These are called as some G proteins. So these are called G protein coupled receptors. We will discuss from the tomorrow's class onwards. Now the important thing, which is the last thing in this particular class, how this auxin is able to control the cell signaling or signal transduction. So this auxin is having a specific receptor, and this particular class of receptor is called as ubiquitin ligase. When we were studying the cell cycle, I told you this ubiquitin ligase is an enzyme which is called as E3. So this is E3. So this ubiquitin ligase is, what is the function of ubiquitin ligase? So function is to add ubiquitin ubiquitin protein, which is some I think 67 or 76 amino acid protein, over some some target protein. So if the ubiquitin protein, suppose this is a ubiquitin protein, I should change the color, okay, so that you are able to understand. So suppose this is ubiquitin protein or ubiquitin molecule. So these ubiquitin protein will be added to this particular target repressor protein, which is inhibiting your which is inhibiting your, and these ubiquitin tags are added and they can form the polymers. So polyubiquitin tags are added over the repressor proteins because they were inhibiting the transcription of some of the target genes. So if this particular ubiquitin ligase is able to add the ubiquitin residues over your repressor protein, the repressor will be degraded by some proteasome. So proteasome 26S will come and it will degrade your repressor protein. Once the repressor is gone, so the gene is free. So transcription of the auxin inducible genes can take place. So that's simple mechanism of auxin, or some plant hormone regulation of signal transduction. Hope you are able to understand this particular section. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to clear out these things. If you are having query now, you can ask your queries because okay, 8 members are still there. No problem. I'm unmuting you for some time so that you can ask your queries, and then we will finish this particular class. So guys, if you're having some query, you can ask me, or I'm also having a chat box open in front of me. So you can type in the chat box or you may ask directly.